Hello and welcome to the ORH Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Finley Cannon, and once again joined by Adam Driscoll as we talk all things Luton Town. And it's been a pretty busy week for the club with back-to-back away games, as we discussed in our last episode. And we're going to be talking all about the most recent game against Stevenage away from home in what they thought was a derby. And both Luton fans and quite clearly the players did not think it was a derby based on what we saw on the pitch. We'll be talking all about that and discussing some of your opinions on social media as well. So tune in to the second half for those opinions as well. But before that, don't forget to go to oakroadhatter.com to check out all the latest content from us. And be sure to like, follow and subscribe on Spotify and subscribe on YouTube as well. But let's get straight into things. Adam, how are you doing?
Yeah, fine. I went to the game yesterday and it still hasn't left me yet. The disappointment, the frustration, the anger, lots of different words that I'm sure everybody else is feeling. I think, other games this season that we've lost, not played well in, have left me a lot quicker. But this one is lingering, and yeah, maybe it is because the fact it's against Stevenage and it's a local game, but it feels like we've just sunk to a new low. So it's one that feels particularly hard to get over, and unfortunately we have a couple more weeks until our next game or next league game, so it's going to linger around for a little bit longer as well.
Yeah, it's one we're going to have to linger on with sort of the semi-international break that we've now got, with obviously players going away on international duty, which means we've not got a game now for a little while. We've not got the Huddersfield game has been rearranged, which might be a bit of a blessing, to be honest, and we'll talk about why that might be. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people will be feeling the same way. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the defeat at Stevenage, as we've mentioned. But before that, let's just quickly discuss the game on Tuesday night against Blackpool, where we drew 2-2, which actually feels like ages ago now. I didn't go to the game. I know a few people who did, who made that hardy journey up to Blackpool on a Tuesday night, including both of my cousins, who unsurprisingly were out in Blackpool afterwards, painting the town a little bit more orange, although it's pretty orange already. But yeah, I thought we were lucky to get something from that game. We only got something, in my opinion, because Blackpool really took their foot off the gas in the second half and let us have far more than they probably should have done. And then obviously since then we've seen Steve Bruce go after their weekend result. So clearly that result was a bit of a turning point for them. Unfortunately, recent results are yet to be a turning point for us in the dugout. So yeah, that late equaliser against Blackpool, which we celebrated on the pitch, it looked like we celebrated like we just won the league. But off the pitch, you could tell there was a lot of frustration from Luton fans. And that led into the game just gone, which you mentioned that you were at, against Stevenage, which we lost 2-0 against the side 15 miles down the road. So first of all, I want you to tell me what it was like inside the Luton end in terms of the atmosphere at full time.
At full time, it was pretty toxic. I think it was probably similar to anybody that was at the Lincoln game, which I wasn't, but my understanding is that it was pretty much exactly the same. It's just everybody's had enough, and we go through every game. We listen to interviews from people higher in the club who tell us what they think and what they think the position of the club is and what we're expected to see as success. But everybody's just had enough now. So the atmosphere at full time on Saturday reflected that. We'll go into some of the details of the game, but the players sheepishly made their way over to the away end. The only real things of note, Naismith, who had a shocker alongside everybody else, gave his shirt to someone in the crowd. Cohen Bramall, who probably was the only real positive from the game, from our perspective, seemed to front up and come a little bit closer. and almost look back into the crowd for a good while alongside Mengi. And I've been critical of Mengi, but I actually think that was I'm going to stand here and front it up from him and from Bramall. But our supposed leader decided that he wasn't going to do that this week, and he was going to make a very early exit towards the tunnel. So Matt Bloomfield stayed for not long at all, turned his back on the fans, and very quickly walked towards the tunnel. And to me, that was an action of somebody who knows he's run out of time, but yet, post-match press conference and a lack of action as we speak right now suggests that that's not the case. So, yeah, it was toxic. It was horrible. But what more do you expect when everybody is just sick to the back teeth of having to put up with what we are at the moment?
And obviously, we were beaten 2-0 by a very well drilled Stevenage side who are organised under Alex Ravel, who himself is a fairly young manager. He's 42. He's not had that much experience as a coach, but he's clearly got everyone at that club has bought into what he's doing. They're well drilled. They know they've got a low budget. They make good use of the experienced players in their squad, and they have a few young players as well. One of those in Kem Campbell obviously scored the opening goal, and it was actually a very, very good finish in that second half. On 65 minutes, it was a very well struck goal, and there wasn't much Keeley could have done about that himself, but it seemed quite easy for Campbell to find the space to get the shot away.
Yeah, it was. It's a good finish. Like, let's give the guy his credit. He's put it, as far as I can see, in watching it again, pretty much in the corner. So yeah, absolutely, it's a good finish and fair play to him. And also, I just want to say as well, fair play to Stevenage, because the first half was shocking from both teams. But they, as you've said, they're organised. They know their formation. They know their responsibilities. They know how to defend as a team. Like, they'll run through a brick wall for each other. I don't think some of our players would run through an open door for each other or the manager. So I have to give them credit, and they did deserve it absolutely on second half, and it could have been more than two. But yeah, I mean the goal itself, the first goal, we're so easy to play against. How has a guy got all that space on the edge of the box? And I mean, he could have picked out sort of the square of the net that he wanted to put the ball in. It's just shambolic from us, and you give decent players an opportunity, and they'll punish you. And yeah, it's exactly what happened.
And it's the kind of goal we've seen us concede over and over again over the last 2 or 3 seasons in the Premier League. We were conceding a lot of goals where a player was sort of cutting in, usually from the left, firing the ball across goal into a sort of an unreachable area, or even sometimes a reachable area. And they seem to be goals that we just concede constantly. That felt like it had gone away a little bit under Bloomfield, but it seems to be happening again now. But as we mentioned, it was a well-struck finish, but once again, the player's not organised enough to get tight. There's no pressing, there's no one's taking account for picking up that player and getting tight to him to stop him having the time to fire a shot. And he's a player that's come through the Wolves Academy, so he's clearly a talented player. But yeah, he just had far too much time, and scored a very, very good goal, in fairness to him. Let's talk about that second goal, because that one is far less respectable in terms of, first of all, it's a pretty good shot, like it's well struck, but Keeley's got to do much, much better with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And his confidence is now showing that it's knocked based on how we are as a defensive unit. The amount of pressure that he's under every game, and he was at fault for the first Blackpool goal on Tuesday night. And he's just absolutely, yeah, he has to do better with that second goal. I mean, it's a good strike, but it's a standard strike. To be beaten like that at your near post is just not good enough. And yes, we can look at the players in front. How are we letting a guy get a shot away again? And there's obviously a lot of question marks around that and the phases of play before. But ultimately, I would expect Keeley to keep that out, and he hasn't. And then from then, I mean, talk about heads dropping. It was ridiculous. I mean, even between the two goals, Bloomfield made a quadruple change, and yet, so they scored on 65. We made a quadruple change on 68, and then they score 3 minutes the other side on 71. So it's just ridiculous. It's absolute madness. But as I say, Stevenage deserved it. I mean, they could and should have scored at least 3. Jamie Reid had a one-on-one that somehow he's just put wide of the right-hand post. Just shambles, mate. Absolute shambles. Sums us up pretty much at the moment.
Yeah, very much the opposite to what we're seeing from Stevenage this season. Obviously, as we've mentioned, well-drilled side, getting the most out of what they've got. Players overperforming, you could argue, and they sit top of League One, whilst we're down in 11th place. What, now 9 points off Stevenage in first. It doesn't really feel like we're getting anywhere near the playoffs as it stands from what we've seen recently. We're lucky to pick up a draw away from home at times, and at home it's getting more and more sort of negative at this stage. And yeah, we've seen on social media that Matt Bloomfield has well and truly lost the backing of the Luton fans, which I think we could see was coming. You mentioned a couple of weeks ago that we needed a minimum of 7 points from the 3 games we've seen. Well, we got 4.
Yeah. Well, and exactly. But also look at the way we've got 4. We played Doncaster at home, and we were having the ball in the corner flag in injury time to see out the game. And that's a Doncaster team that have done pretty well up to now, but obviously had a pretty poor day when they came to us. But we win 1-0 in a fairly average game. I think it wasn't dire, but it certainly wasn't amazing. We then go to Blackpool and we are on the back foot from minute 1. We're 2-0 down. And a typical Luton that it takes something to get us kind of up the pitch. And yeah, we get a 90th minute penalty to make it 2-2, but we take a point away from it. And you're thinking, right, okay, fine. Well, that's 4 points from the 2 games. But did anyone really hand on heart think we were going to go to Stevenage and win and get those 3 points to hit the goal that we set of 7 points? I certainly didn't. I went there with hope as opposed to expectation, but we're just really, really poor. And 4 points from those games when you needed 7 minimum really is just it's just not good enough at all. As I look at the table right now, played 11, drawn just the 1, and we've won 5 and lost 5. And as you would expect, bang in mid-table, because we are right now showing ourselves to be a bang average League One team.
Yeah, it feels like we've really fallen off so much over the last 2 seasons. Obviously now Rob Edwards sitting pretty at the top of the Championship with Middlesbrough, and we're stuck in 11th in League One. You maybe look at it now and go, perhaps he wasn't the problem. Like, it really does feel like he's not actually the issue anymore. And I don't know if that's the case, and I don't know if I'm being a bit reactive in that, but clearly the problem runs a bit deeper than the manager.
Yeah, I think that's a fair call. I mean, I think Edwards was partly the problem, but unfortunately, I think the other part of the problem still remains at the club. I mean, how deep do we want to go into it? But we're being led by incompetence right now, and we're an embarrassment of a football club. I saw a tweet earlier on today, and it really just hit home for me that 17 months ago we were still a Premier League club, and here we are 17 months later, and we've been led into being a mediocre League One club that right now, in all honesty, is the laughing stock of English football. Let's get it right. Everybody followed us and gave us praise on the way up. Everyone looked at Luton for, can we be them? But they're all laughing at us now, and you can't blame them, can you? And unfortunately, us as supporters, we're just expected to suck it up and put up with the nonsense, post-match press conferences, all the excuses under the sun. And then for when we do hear from the higher levels in the club, all of our concerns and questions and queries get batted away as if, well, they don't know what they're talking about, and the changes they want within the club aren't going to happen. So it's honestly, it's truly embarrassing. And I don't think, even when we were struggling to get out of the conference, I still felt a pride in supporting the club. But right now, everybody feels so detached from it that I think if there was a game on Saturday, you'd have a lot of people that just can't be bothered to go, and that's kind of how sad it is right now.
Yeah, and we're a club that's trying to gear up to go into a significantly bigger stadium, and now, as most people I know who are Luton fans, aren't excited about going to the football at any point. Like in the Championship, I was excited about going to games. There's always the opportunity to play a big side. There are some massive sides in the Championship. I've got good following, and the same in League One. There's good away fans and there's some entertaining games, but none of that entertainment is ever coming from us at the moment. You mentioned that obviously we were in the Premier League less than 2 years ago. I can't even imagine how we got into the Premier League at this point, based on what we're seeing. Like, it just seems a million miles away from what we're actually seeing on the pitch. And other people I know who only really sort of became interested in Luton really was when we were in the Premier League. Now ask us, where are you now? Like, you're in League One, you're 11th in League One. They're just baffled by what is happening, because people from the outside just cannot see how it's gone so wrong so quickly.
Yeah, and the disappointment wasn't the fact we didn't retain our Premier League status. It's the fact that the expectation was that we would go back down, we'd re-establish ourselves as a solid Championship unit, maybe try and push a playoff place, and try and be that yo-yo club between Prem and Champ. But you're right, people that looked out for our results and would drop you the odd message, even after defeat, saying like how much courage and fight we'd shown. You're getting the same messages being like, what the hell is going on? And this is what I'm talking about. Us as fans we're just getting humiliated week after week. And, the club want fans to keep coming back through the turnstiles. They want fans to keep a bit of money behind the club. But ultimately, if you're just providing a humiliation to your supporters and an embarrassment on a pretty much a weekly basis, that isn't going to carry on much longer, is it? You're not going to have fans that are willing to put their money behind the club and keep supporting. It's, of course, fans will always turn up, but there's going to be a lot of people that very soon, unless serious change happens, are going to find a lot more interesting things to do. And that probably includes going Christmas shopping with your wife, your girlfriend, anything to basically try and stay away from the disappointment that we're seeing.
Yeah, I didn't get a ticket for Stevenage, but in the end, I was a bit relieved that I didn't go. I ended up playing rugby, as I do tend to when I'm not playing, not when I'm not going to the Luton games. And I was playing against a side from Luton, and in that side was a couple of people I recognised from Luton games who said they had no interest in going to Stevenage because of how bad it's been, and would have rather played in the rugby game in really, really gusty wind that was blowing across all day, and just a more enjoyable experience being part of that than actually going to a game at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. I went with a mate of mine, Ollie, and we were literally at half time thinking about going over to M&S on the other side of the retail park and doing something better, like going to the M&S cafe. It was just, I say it tongue in cheek, but then, at some point in the second half, you're thinking actually that's probably going to be more fun. I don't know. I mean, the break could be a good thing for us in that we don't play again in the league for a couple of weeks. It's going to be really interesting to see what the reaction is if we are in the same scenario with obviously personnel. When it comes to the next game, it's going to be a very interesting atmosphere and reception for the players and the squad, I think.
Can you see a change happening in the dugout at any time in this? We've got a bit of a break now, apart from the midweek Virtue Trophy game against Pelly.
No, not really. I no longer trust the board to make the right call at the right time. Bearing in mind, this is the board that, 30 months ago got us to the Premier League. I don't trust them to make the call that needs to be made, and the call that needs to be made is Bloomfield getting sacked. I mean, everybody can see that now. Like I've been someone that's been kind of maybe less of that opinion before the last 3 weeks, but even I'm 100% saying that is the decision that needs to be made. Now, based on what we heard from Gary Sweet through Three Counties a couple of weeks ago, I don't see them making this decision in the near future. And I think ultimately, again, they're going to, whenever they do have to do it, if they do have to do it, it's going to be left too late. I think everybody will look at last season and they'll flag the Middlesbrough away game as the moment that Edwards needed to leave the club. For me, this is the moment of this season where they have to make a managerial change. And I just don't think they have the balls. I think they're too stubborn to make that call because they're in charge and we're not. And certain people on that board want that to come across to supporters. That's extremely apparent. So, yeah, I don't think they're going to make a change.
Yeah, it feels like fans have turned more now than when they did when Graham Jones was in charge, and that is a pretty significant move, you'd have to say.
Yeah, I mean, Graham Jones was shocking, wasn't he? But you're getting similar vibes. The football's terrible. The media and the press conferences are mind-numbingly dull, and just not inspiring whatsoever. So you are sort of getting flashbacks to that sort of era. We were quite fortunate during that time that I think we had the COVID break came and they parted company with Graham Jones and obviously Nathan was there to come back. But even then, we nearly ran out of games. We think had Blackburn equalised on the last game of the season, we were going to be down. So yeah, we just about left it. We just about made that call at the right time then. Obviously last season we didn't, but I know what you mean about the Graham Jones vibes. I hope it ends up going the same way, to be honest. And Bloomfield is a nice guy, but he's not doing his job. We're not seeing anything that suggests that he's doing his job. And now we've had a quarter of the season gone pretty much. That's not good enough, and it just has to change.
Yeah, the saying is nice guys finish last. Well, unfortunately, Matt Bloomfield, you are finishing last in the opinions of basically every Luton fan I know at this point. We'll be talking more about those opinions after a quick break. Welcome back to the Oak Road Hatter podcast. You're still joined by myself, Finley Cannon, and Adam Driscoll, and we're looking at your opinions now. So we asked on Twitter, ahead of recording tonight, let's have your Hatters hot takes on yesterday's defeat and or the situation at the club in general. So we're going to go through some of those comments. So LTFC Dave says, slept on it and still think Bloomfield has to go. Not sure who the alternative is though. wouldn't bet against us taking the cheap option and giving it to Lawless and co. And to be honest, I think he's spot on, particularly with that second part.
Yeah, because it's counting pennies, isn't it? And again, we were told in an interview the other week that pretty much every penny is going into Power Court, and that is the be all and end all. Something again that I hugely disagree with, but shock horror, me and Gary Sweet are not on the same page. Yeah, Dave's right with the first point. Bloomfield does have to go. You can sleep on it for the next 7, 8, 10 nights, whatever, and he still has to go. The thing I'm struggling with is that, you know, we are not in a position now to be giving the managerial position whenever it becomes available, whether it's now or January, to an inexperienced, let's try an unproven coach. Like, we have to get promoted this season. Otherwise, I genuinely fear how long we're going to be stuck back at this level, and we become that League One club again. That's, you know, can plucky Luton get back to the Championship, which is what nobody wants. So for me, wherever we go with it, whenever it is, it has to be an experienced manager with skin in the game, you know, that will command respect and have enough knowledge and flexibility behind him already. But not Steve Bruce, because obviously he's just been sacked by Blackpool in the same league. So yeah, I think, you know, Dave's not wrong in terms of saying I wouldn't bet against us going down the Lawless or the similar mould type route, but it's, yeah, you're just moving the problem to someone else in my mind with that sort of manager profile.
Kev Lennon says, where do we begin? A manager out of his depth, an unbalanced squad, a board and CEO in denial again, fans very unhappy. The root cause of the problem remains and thinks we should be happy to have him and be more positive.
There's no guesses as to who that last sentence is about. But yeah, I mean, this is a massive problem I have at the moment. I've lost a lot of respect for Gary Sweet and the board that gave me my greatest day watching Luton. You know, obviously the Premier League was great, but the euphoria of winning the playoff final and getting to the Premier League was insane for any Luton fan that's in their 20s or in their 30s or whatever. But I've just lost so much respect now because all we hear is rubbish. We hear, you know, we read program notes. We hear interviews that are just condescending, that are putting the fans sort of back in their place. And let's be honest, the only person within the club that got Billy Big Bollocks when we got promoted was Gary Sweet himself. So yeah, I don't disagree with Kev at all. I mean, he's also said manager out of his depth, yes. Unbalanced squad, yes. Although I do think the squad's still way good enough to get promoted this season still. And a board and CEO in denial. So yeah, it's really hard to disagree with any of that.
Yeah, we'll move on to the next one. Paul Sparks says, for all that 2020 have committed, for the hours of hard graft done, for the eternal debt that supporters owe, things have moved on. The structure of the club is now crying out for a business and football focus, managed by different people according to skill sets. And it's something we've spoken about over and over again. We are in desperate need of a sporting director or a director of football to lead the on the pitch and the transfers and all of that footballing side of things, because it's quite clear that Gary Sweet and the majority of the board, by what it seems, just couldn't give a toss about the footballing side of things now. All they care about is Power Court and some trees that might be planted or might not, because we're not going to score enough goals to make an orchard in there.
I mean, you'll find out over the next week or so how much they really care about what we're going to get out of this season if they take action. But as I said earlier on, I don't think they will, because the comments that we heard the other week seem to suggest that a top 6 place is success, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous to suggest that a top 6 finish is success. Even if the only way it's success if you go and win the playoffs, but otherwise it's just not. But Paul, I mean, you're not going to get the change you want, because you're talking about individuals needing to relinquish control, and they're not willing to do that. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you, mate. And we're now at a point with the club where pretty much every supporter that I spoke to yesterday at the ground, on social media, all bar a couple of Twitter accounts that we think could be Gary Sweet's burner accounts, they're all saying the same thing, and it's the opinions that are not aligned with what we're hearing from the club and the board. So yeah, it's mad, but you're not going to get certain individuals relinquishing control anytime soon. So you're not going to get a director of football, and you're not going to get any change on the footballing side of the structure.
Yeah, there's a couple more comments that go down a similar route to that. So PR says Matt Bloomfield needs to go. New manager needs to be experienced. Board needs to understand that we're a football club, not a property developer. How long until it goes fully toxic at Kenilworth Road? Board have got away very lightly so far. What is the long-term plan for the club? Power court alone is not a plan. And yeah, he's pretty much echoed everything we've said there. Power court, yeah, it could be a nice shiny new stadium, but it's still a stadium that will be hosting League One football as things stand, unless things get worse, because I can't see them getting better at any point with how it's currently being run.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I know Jamie's been quite vocal on have we become a property development company? Because it feels that way because of what we hear around every penny going into the ground, and obviously what we're seeing on the pitch on the footballing side. So it's hard to form a different opinion. I mean, as far as the long term plan goes, Power Court obviously is great because it keeps our club alive for the next 100 odd years or whatever. But at what cost? I know we can't grow where we are now at Kenilworth Road, but you can do both. You can build the future of the club and still show ambition and make the right calls that mean that when Power Court opens, it's not a home game in League One against someone like, I'm not going to name a club because it'll probably be disrespectful, but you can have a lot of empty seats for your opening game of the Power Court Stadium, unless you do something and you can somehow start to align footballing responsibilities with everything else that's going on off the pitch. So yeah, Pete's spot on again. When does it go fully toxic? When do you think it's going to go fully toxic?
I think it's getting pretty close already. I think we're lucky that there's a break now. I think if we had played Huddersfield this weekend coming, which I could not see us getting a result from, by the way, if we were hosting Huddersfield, I think that would have been a game we would have lost. And they're a good side. They're a side that's recruited ambitiously. They're recruited well. I think Joe Taylor probably would have scored and celebrated as well. I think we could have easily seen it get really, really quite toxic after that. But the fact that we don't have that game has actually saved them, I think. It gives them the opportunity to make the change, which we're so desperately calling for, but I just don't believe it will happen, as you've mentioned as well. And they could surprise us and we'll be recording another pod. We'll end up recording another pod in the week because there's been a surprise change in the dugout. I just don't feel like it's going to happen. But if we lose the next, whoever we've got next, I think Northampton might be the next away game. Another fairly local one. I guess they're lucky that there's executive tickets being prioritised for those local games, whatever that means. So they've got some property developers in the away end, if that's what that means. If not, I might be wrong about that. But yeah, I think the next home game after that, if we lose that, it turns. But whenever the next game is that you've got a significant Luton contingent there, they've lost them. They've already lost them as it is.
Yeah, I stood there a number of times yesterday and said to the people around me, I don't see how Bloomfield can come back from this, given the atmosphere and the occasion, and it's an occasion for Stevenage, and it's an important game for us because you want to win the game against the team down the road, regardless of whether it's a derby or not. I just didn't see how, being there in the moment, I didn't see how we could lose and put in that abject of a performance and him live to tell the tale. I think you're right. We've got Huddersfield at home in our next game. If we lose that, then it's going to be brutal, to the extent that the board are going to be extremely uncomfortable being at the game, because they're going to get abuse. And they, I don't like personal abuse. We can criticize the board. We can give our thoughts on their lack of accountability, the mistakes they've made, but they're still the ones that run the club. They are still the ones that have the ability to make the right call. So yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't condone anyone giving them abuse, but you can obviously constructively, as a supporter, make your voice heard. And I think if we were to lose it at home to Huddersfield, then they'll certainly be hearing a few voices and a few opinions.
Yeah, we've already seen it happen on quite a number of times recently, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. I think maybe the statement from the Loyal Luton Supporters Club probably sums it up better than anything. So we'll read that. It's quite long, so you'll have to bear with me as I attempt to read this. But their statement was, quote, "If Matt wasn't capable, we would have absolutely no qualms in making that tough decision." Gary Sweet, the 25th of September, 2025. That time has come. It's time for Matt Bloomfield to step down as the manager of this great club. We cannot go on like this anymore. Lincoln was poor, but today losing to Stevenage and intending no disrespect to them is the limit. The support is frustrated and angry at what is being dished up and disguised as football. It's embarrassing and has to stop. We were going to call for the manager to step down after the abysmal performance against Lincoln, but decided to wait. However, it is clear that nothing is going to improve, so it is time, sadly, for Matt Bloomfield to depart Kenilworth Road in order for someone else to come in and try and save our season. The CEO has stated that the playoffs are the minimum expectation we need. We need change now, and now for this to be a realistic ambition. We were told last season in programme notes from a boardroom ahead of Championship fixture against Portsmouth on the 1st of March 2025 the lessons had been learned. This was echoed post-relegation when there was talk of fresh optimism and renewed vigour. We are not seeing any of that. The players also need to realise, as alluded to by Jordan Clark post-Lincoln, that playing for Luton Town isn't just a stroll in the park. It's about putting a shift in and showing that you actually care, rather than what we're enduring and witnessing over these last 2 seasons. Step up or fuck off. It's as simple as that. Enough is enough. And that was from the Loyal Luton Sports Club. And I think that's probably a fair reflection of how we all feel as a podcast and as a fan channel. And it reflects very much reflects the opinion of Luton fans now in general. We are going to talk about if a change was to happen in the dugout. And we've mentioned that we can't see it happening. We've been looking at some of the options that are out of work at the moment. And as Adam mentioned to me off camera, it doesn't fill you with too much optimism when you see that some of the names are available, because I can't see us going and doing what we did with Matt Bloomfield and poaching a manager from another club. Also, I can't see us many managers looking at what we're doing at the moment and going, yeah, that seems like an attractive prospect. So let's just go through this list here, and if there's any names that stand out to you, Adam, just interrupt me and just interrupt me and say why you think they might be a good appointment. So I listed a few. So we've got Paul Hurst, John Brady, Matt Taylor, Luke Williams, Liam Richardson, Neil Critchley, Tony Mowbray.
Well, all bar one name on that list just smacks me in the face of your mid-table League One, and is a massive reminder of where we are. Again, like, I'm sure some of those guys are good managers that will get another opportunity, and they'll show themselves to be a good manager again. But for us right now, none of those names you look at and go, yes. And the only one I look at is Tony Mowbray, because, as I said, like, we need an experienced head, someone that's been in the game for donkeys, that has a resume that the players go, oh, okay, actually, yeah, I can kind of believe in this guy, and the fans can get behind it as well. I mean, Mowbray probably isn't the most charismatic, of of managers. When we beat them in the playoff semis, when he was Sunderland manager, it was all a bit bitter, wasn't it? But I don't really care about that. I mean, I want a manager that knows what they're doing and that is experienced in the game. Now, unfortunately, for 2020, those managers will not come cheap. So if you are serious and you do make a decision, you've got to put your hands deep in your pocket and go and get someone like that. Now, there will be other managers that people will probably listening to this will throw at us, and we can talk about them next time we speak. But from the ones that you've listed there, Mowbray really is the only one that I look at and go, yes, I would take him. The issue that I see as well is that you've got Matt Bloomfield and his staff that have all got 3 years left on their contract. So, they obviously won't be on similar wages to Bloomfield and his staff. I wouldn't have thought. Edwards and his staff, as to when we got rid of them. But you're still going to have to pay up people on 3 years left of their contract. So that isn't going to come cheap. It's going to come down to money, and that goes back to Dave's comment around. I can see them giving the gig to Lawless and co, and you just can see them doing something on the cheap side of things and going, oh well, we made the change that everyone was asking for. Here it is, But yeah, I would say Mowbray right now is the one that stands out to me as someone that I would really want us to get in.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think Mowbray is the best of the options there, but I don't think I question whether he'd even want to drop down to our level, because I can see him getting a job in the Championship during this season. There'll be a side that's struggling that has to make a change in the dugout. Norwich, for example, doesn't seem to be going too well at the moment, and I can see them making a change fairly soon. After obviously they lost the derby today at the time of recording. They seem like a side to me that wouldn't be against making the change, and Mowbray seems like a manager that could go in there and get something out of those players. And I don't know if he's even willing to drop down to League One. He's certainly used to being at a higher level. The only one that I looked at and thought maybe that wouldn't be a bad option is Luke Williams. He did really well at Notts County, obviously, but then moved to Swansea and sort of didn't really go anywhere at Swansea. And he's the one that he's fairly inexperienced still, but he seems to have got something right in the EFL with Notts County. You just wonder maybe he'd be an option. But I think what we do need is someone who's going to come in and demand the board do things their way. So if they say, I need a director of football, I need a sporting director to deal with the transfers and things like that, that needs to happen. We need a manager, we need a head coach or a manager that's going to demand something from the board, and I just can't see them accepting that.
No, and I think it's really hard for a potential manager who maybe even in talks with the club to start demanding appointments of other positions that change the structure of the club. Unless you're talking to an absolute gem of a manager that none of us would ever think would ever come to this level or whatever. You can't really, as a manager that's looking for a new job, start making demands on your potential employer and their structure. So I think that's extremely unlikely. The only other one, and it's funny you mentioned Mowbray and Norwich and jobs coming up in the Championship. I actually would, if Norwich were looking to change from Liam Manning fairly soon, I would be happy with that as well, because he's not setting the world on fire, is he, with Norwich? But he's managed before at MK Dons, 48% win percentage. Went to Oxford, 48% win percentage. Went to Bristol City, a team that have finished mid-table in the Championship for God knows how many years in a row, and got them into the playoffs last season. And moved to Norwich in the summer, and it's not quite worked out. But to me, it's not a 55, 60-year-old manager with 500 games under his belt, but it's a manager that has already got enough in the game that you'd look at and go, yeah, I think that's actually quite a good one. But again, like Mowbray, would he come down to League One unless you're going to give him some big money? I'm not sure. I'm not sure he would. So we're going to be in a bit of a rock and a hard place, I think, whenever it comes to making a managerial change.
Yeah, I do like that Liam Manning suggestion, but there is a good chance he'll end up at a better side when they make a change, because but we can hope he would consider Luton. Obviously, he's been at MK Dons. He's been at Oxford. He can go for another fairly local side with us and not have to move too far, which would be lovely for him. So I know she's not in charge there anymore, but Delia Smith, where are you? Let's be having you. Please make a change in that dugout and let him come our way.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. But I don't know. I don't know how much he's involved anymore, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. But again, it goes back to the whole point. Can we see the change happening anytime soon, or from our perspective? I just can't really see it. So if we do an emergency pod, if you see any emergency pod tweets in the week, then obviously we'll jump on and record and give thoughts on anything. But yeah, I won't be banking on jumping on it anytime soon.
Yeah, that's everything from today's episode. So as always, let us know your opinions on anything we've discussed. If there's a manager that you think that could be a really great option, and if you can find one, a realistic option, please let us know, because we'd love to have that conversation. We could even get you on to discuss why you think that is. So let us know in the comments or on social media, and we'll be sure to discuss that as well. But from myself and from Adam, thank you very much for listening to what has been another very ranty episode.